hello everyone. I'm really happy to be here. And after all those mind-blowing ideas and the information this morning, this is going to be quite a simple, practical kind of session. And I'm really happy to talk about this at this time of year. I feel that September is a time when, for a lot of us, there's a sense of disjunction. You know, I keep hearing when I ask people how they're doing, they say, oh, I'm just gearing up again, I'm just revving up again, I'm just getting myself back in gear. Because many of us have taken a break over the summertime. We might have spent some time in the countryside or by the seaside, or maybe just being able to slow down a little bit outdoors and enjoy barbecues and whatever we do in the summer. And there's this sense that we have to kind of shoehorn ourselves back into this very, very hectic life in the city where we're having to meet deadlines and to get from A to B and to live with the tyranny of the to-do list. And so I'm going to talk about my experience based on London, where I live, but I hope it will have some resonance for other cities where you might live. Do most people live in the city or work in the city or both, most of you? Yeah? So there might be a few who don't, but probably even those who don't have to relate with cities some of the time. I was talking with someone called Mark from Holland yesterday, who said that at the moment he's working in London and commuting from a tiny town in Holland that doesn't even have a traffic light and having to kind of deal with that disjunction. Mark? Yes, there he is. So he was saying he really feels that. You know, we feel it in our bones. We feel it in our bones, that change of pace. And so this is something that has interested me from 25 years ago when I first moved to London. So as the introduction said, I used to be I was a research fellow in Cambridge in history. I'd been writing my PhD, which is a very slow activity. And I was riding around everywhere on a very old-fashioned bicycle. And then I took a job with the BBC and was working at Broadcasting House, which is at Oxford Circus, which is the busiest intersection in London. You have to wait, you know, just to even get into the underground at rush hours because there's so many people there. So I really felt that sense of the number of people per square meter. And also my job was very much about time. You know, a live radio producer, you have to get the interviewer on and off in 3 minutes, 30 seconds, or whatever it is. So I felt that in my bones, and I had all this sort of, I loved it. It was a great adrenaline rush, but also I had all the sort of physical symptoms of stress, and in my case, my skin flares up, I get very itchy, so I was literally uncomfortable in my own skin. So luckily, I went on holiday and I picked up a book in the airport which said Teach Yourself Meditation. It just caught my eye with a very cheesy cover with a candle on it. And I did a little bit of mindfulness of breathing. And luckily, I just connected with it enough to be interested. And so when I got back to London, I looked for somewhere I could learn more about it. And in those days, there wasn't the secular mindfulness movement. So you really needed to go to a Buddhist center, and was the most practical place to learn about meditation. And so I found the London Shambhala Meditation Center, which has a real tradition of teaching. Shambhala has a tradition of teaching meditation as a very natural human skill. You don't need to have a belief system along with it. You can also explore the Buddhist roots if you want to. So these cushions, or I got one of my own in my room, and this became for me the still point in all that craziness, the still point of the turning world. And that place where I could nurture that stability and sense of strength and resilience to cope with the busyness of London life. And also discovering that it was more than just about calming down, as we've been hearing. You know, it's also about opening our hearts and opening our minds and really being able to connect with the rest of the world to discover our interconnectedness. So I left the BBC after working there for 16 years. I had a chance to take redundancy, so I took my handshake, and I decided at that point to try some other projects. And with a couple of friends, we started a project called Slow Down London. And one of our leading spokespeople and patrons was Carl. Is Carl still here in the back? Yeah. So we heard from Carl yesterday. And we worked with about 60 partner organizations around the city to explore this idea of slowing down in various ways. So we did have some meditation centers and yoga centers involved, but not so much about meditation as such, but more about how could we bring slowness into the arts, into nature. We worked with walking organizations and bird watching organizations and parks and so on to put on events across 11 days. Attracted a lot of interest, a lot of international interest. We did a slow walk across Waterloo Bridge where about 300 of us took half an hour to walk very slowly across the bridge, which normally takes 2 minutes. And lots of press internationally, and also, as you can imagine, well, in Britain, our right-wing tabloid press likes to be very cynical, so we attracted a lot of abuse as well, which is part of what, part of the whole thing. And we also did things like a slow club where we, over a few years, we experimented with that, with meeting once a week and trying out ways that we could slow down, like, tasting food slowly or going for a slow walk. And then around the same time, I started to train. The secular mindfulness movement was taking off, and so I myself trained as a mindfulness teacher and began teaching mindfulness classes, and really appreciating that approach, the MBSR, mindfulness-based stress reduction, as a way of reaching people outside of the sort of spiritual context. And so I've been more and more involved in that mindfulness movement. I'm also part of the group that you heard about yesterday that Chris Ruane is leading, and I'm working with Sarah Post, who's also here as the coordinators of the workplace strand on that. So I guess my vocabulary has sort of shifted a little more to mindfulness recently, because that's something people are connecting with a lot in the UK in the last couple of years. And I was commissioned to write this book. You can see me up there on Nelson's column. Very nice view. So this is something in the last year I was really, again, trying to explore. What does that mean to bring mindfulness into the heart of this very chaotic environment? And I think I've been thinking about it and working with it in a couple of different ways. One, you could say, was really about time out, and one is about time in. So time out, really looking at how can we use the wonderful cultural and natural resources of our cities in a way that actually helps us to be more present and more awake, rather than just cranking us up. And I think what we discovered in Slow Down London, when we worked with the Slow Club, we asked people to keep a record of their sense of pace and their relationship to time and stress before the club and during it and afterwards. And something that people reported was that actually on the weekends, which was supposed to be their so-called leisure time, they often felt at least as frenetic, if not more, than on the weekdays, because not only were they perhaps trying to also keep up with some work and emails and so on, but they were trying to do their shopping and their laundry, and if they had kids, they were ferrying them all over the place, and they were trying to see the blockbuster art exhibitions, and they were trying to see friends, and so it felt very frenetic. And so I think, for example, art is a very good way that we can work with the idea of slowing down, that certainly in our city, people tend to just go to the art exhibition when it's this unmissable exhibition, and you're running through trying to make sure you've seen every unmissable painting that might not be coming to the city for another 100 years. And the researchers show that we spend 30 seconds on average in front of an artwork. The artist took hours, days, months to create, maybe years to create that artwork, and then we're just rushing by and maybe reading the caption. So we did something called a slow art experiment in our Slow Club, where a group of us went to a gallery and we said, we'll take an hour and we're going to look at maximum 3 artworks, and we'll all go off separately, and you can allow a bit of time for wandering around and seeing which one is drawing you. And then it means that you're going to spend at least 10 or 15 minutes in front of that painting. And we said, don't look at the caption, read the caption maybe at the end if you want to. We all think we have to know so much about the painting, and actually, if you stand in front of that, you can see with children, you stand in front of the artwork and you really just spend time with it, and when you think you're getting bored, just spend more time with it, and the intention of the artist, starts to reveal itself. So that was a wonderful experiment, and we all enjoyed that. And I try to bring that in now. Most of our cities hopefully have some free museums where we can just pop in, maybe if you're passing, like the National Gallery, and pop in for 15 minutes and just look at one piece of art instead of running around. Another area that I think is really important that's come up already is nature. That, we know instinctively that nature slows us down, and actually studies show that as well, if we need research to show it, that the cortisol levels go down when we're in nature, that it restores our cognitive functions, the blood pressure goes down. And again, in a place like London, we tend to kind of hop in our cars and clog up the motorways every bank holiday weekend to get out of the city. But actually we have, most cities, extraordinary resources of nature. I think in London we have as many trees as there are people, so over 7 or 8 million trees. And there's a wonderful project by something called the Woodland Trust, which is called the Ancient Tree Hunt. And they're encouraging people to find ancient trees and sort of plot them on a map. This is the Richmond Royal Oak, which is 750 years old, they say. We're talking about long, sort of shifting our perspective to the long view. So some of these trees have been here longer than almost all the buildings in the city, certainly longer than the tube line and the many of our things that we take for granted in our city. And the way that you can tell if a tree is ancient, so they encourage tree hugging. So not as a pagan practice, but actually an adult hug is about 1.5 meters. So, if you can do 3 or 4 adult hugs, then it's probably an ancient tree. So it's quite nice to go and hug a tree and have an excuse. And I think it doesn't have to be. This is Richmond Park, which is one of our great open spaces that our ancestors have bequeathed us in London, who valued these things, luckily. But even just walking from your home to the train station, for example, in most cities there are trees, and I think just to actually to notice them, maybe learn a bit about them. Apparently, we're losing the knowledge. Younger people are not able to identify trees as much as they could before, and I think just by knowing even a few of the species, they come alive. They're not just generic leafy things. So when we notice nature, it kind of takes us into a different sense of time and pace. And food, another area I think we're losing touch with the sense of really enjoying and appreciating our food. We find that so many people are eating on autopilot and doing 5 different things at once, get to the end of the sandwich, eating it, and perhaps at the same time texting and looking at Facebook and so on, and haven't even tasted that. So we can bring our appreciation back into these things, and maybe when we take a break for a cup of tea or coffee, if we're making it, just go through that act of making the tea, really feeling what that's like, the feeling of handling the kettle and all of that. And then when we take the tea or the coffee, instead of going straight to our desk, even if we just could drink half of that cup of tea or coffee with a real sense of tasting it, feeling the heat of it, enjoying it, these little things can help to bring a different sense of pace into the day. So these are kind of ways of taking time out, but I'm also interested in time in. How do we bring a sense of spaciousness and presence and wakefulness into the heart of the things that we find difficult in the city, the really challenging bits, the irritating bits? And so I think to find the pause button, as much as we can, is, for me, the key of doing this through the day. And so I thought maybe we could just take a pause. You can take a pause standing or sitting, but I'll sit just because you're sitting, so we could do that. And just taking a moment to feel the body and feel the feet on the floor. Really feel the contact of the feet. They're probably in shoes, so you can feel that you've got 10 toes that are in the shoes, and you can feel the soles. Feel the ball of the foot and the heel, that sense of connection with the earth. And noticing how you're feeling in this moment. And you can just notice how the mind is, how the body is. helps to just gently put some kind of label on that. I'm feeling exhausted or energized, or my mind is busy, or my stomach is clenched. It's fine. But really with a sense of allowing it to be exactly as it is. So letting it go of any sense of struggle, any sense of needing to change it. And then noticing that you're breathing. Feeling the breath somewhere in the body, wherever you feel it is fine. And again, with a sense that however the breath is fine. If it happens to be shallow or deep or rough or smooth, that's okay. So we're cultivating this inner gentleness that we can allow everything to be just as it is. Noticing if we're resisting any aspect of our experience and just seeing if we can open and soften to whatever is here. And then just for a moment, inviting you to open your awareness to hearing, to sounds. Again, with a sense that you can allow the sounds to be as they are. So just being like a microphone, picking up the sounds without any bias. You can notice the tendency to sort of like certain sounds or dislike them. Label them or have thoughts about them. Seeing if you can let that go and just come back to the experience of the pitch and the tone and the texture. If they're continuous, are they all one note, or is there more to it? And also aware of the space, the vast space of your awareness in which sounds arise and dissolve. And maybe expanding that to having a sense of the space of the room, the space of the building, the city. And just breathing here, sitting here in your own body, allowing the whole thing to be exactly as it is in this moment. And then gently opening your eyes if they've been closed. So we can take these little breathing spaces, I think, through the day. And there are many ways of describing a breathing space. Mark Williams, the great MBCT teacher, has a three-step breathing space, which is wonderful, but sometimes doesn't resonate so much, I think, for people who haven't done a bit of mindfulness training already. So I've put down a few things that I find are very helpful when taking a breathing space in the midst of a busy city environment. Feeling the ground, for me, that I find that so important to come out of this busy whirlwind of the head and get down into the feet. This sense of noticing what's here, especially in your own body and mind state, connecting with the breath. And then it can be a good moment to then also connect with other senses, with the sounds as we just did, or with perhaps looking around in the environment, or tasting if you're in a position to taste something. And so I think what I find really interesting, and also hear also from mindfulness students that I relate with week after week that they find helpful, is seeing how we can bring this into the belly of the beast, the things that really frustrate us and irritate us in the city. So it's not that I'm advocating queues, you know. Of course, it would be wonderful. We want to encourage our services to be fast and not to have to wait in queues. But when we do, you know, there are times when we just can't do anything about it. And so we can notice that tendency that we have to just get more and more revved up. We're just standing there so desperate to be ahead of ourselves. And can we actually take that as a gift, you know, that, okay, well, I've got nothing else to do. Let's feel the feet on the ground. Let's feel how I'm doing. You know, notice that adrenaline, which can feel very uncomfortable, but we can feel that. And then touch in with the breath. And maybe, you know, notice the people around, these extraordinary characters that we're passing every day that have their whole different stories. I think sounds, we just worked for just a moment with sounds, but I love the practice of mindful listening and noticing our reactivity to sounds. And I think in the city, we're constantly just bracing ourselves against a lot of very loud sounds, you know, car alarms and construction and sirens. We have so many sirens in London, and it's very easy to get more and more irritated by those. And so I've been working with how can we make a shift that actually when that sound comes, you know, it's a knife that is cutting through perhaps a mental fog that you're in, a sort of autopilot that you're on. And at that moment, you have a chance to wake up, you know. And at that moment, well, maybe you could actually just take a second to be aware that there's someone there in that ambulance perhaps that's being rushed to the hospital. So it could be a moment to just tap in with that compassion that we were hearing about. Or if that's too much, just, you know, to sort of look around and so, oh, here I am, you know, that letting go of where we were in our head that we were hearing about in the meditation practice this morning. So sounds I think we can take as an opportunity, as a trigger for little pauses. And this one, a friend of mine came up with the red man. I think most cities have a red man who stops us from walking across. And we hate the red man. We want the green man. He's egging us on. We hate this guy. He's holding us up. So could we make friends with the red man? You know, maybe this guy is the good guy because he's telling us, whoa, slow down, you know, pause for a moment. And so we could, again, just feel our feet on the ground. We could look around and maybe look at the sky, see what the weather's like, see what the, you know, the clouds are like. And we're not talking about going into some kind of a reverie or a blank state where we're not going to notice the green man, right? This isn't the kind of practice. This is awareness and wakefulness practice. So it's just something very simple about being present. So these are some ideas I've been playing with and that friends and students have been playing with, but they're really invitations to maybe think about the way we can shift. I think it was really what Tupten was saying yesterday about how we can use people who irritate us as our teachers. So I think in the city we can use the things that irritate us as our teachers as well, and that maybe to reflect on how we get wound up by urban life and how we can really just kind of flip that in the moment in little ways. But also, I think these are like little droplets through the day, little drops of water, very precious, but we also need the stillness of the regular practice. I think if we're really serious about turning things around, we need the time that we sit and we tap into those inner resources of stillness and reflection and so on. So that practice, whether it's 10 minutes or 20 minutes or half an hour, whatever it is that you know, can embody realistically in your life, I think this is what nurtures us, gives us the strength and the resilience and the depth and the openness that then allows us to open in those little moments through the day. So a few thoughts about mindfulness in the city. And we don't have time for a question and answer or discussion, but I will be doing a workshop tomorrow where it would be really delightful to work with some people, and we could come up with ideas together about ways that we can work with this theme. So thank you very much.